K9, German Shepherd fought for his life for days. You won't believe who came to save him. Get ready to cry. He had been out there alone, bleeding, shaking, and abandoned in a ravine no one ever walked through. A K9 once hailed as a hero, now discarded like he never mattered. Each breath was harder than the last. Each night colder. No collar, no tag, no one searching for him. Or so it seemed. But just when all hope was gone, when his strength began to fail, a shadow appeared at the edge of the clearing. A voice he hadn't heard in years called his name. And what happened next will stay with you forever. This is the story of survival, of loyalty that refuses to break, and of a rescue that came from the most unexpected place. You're not just going to watch this, you're going to feel it. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and turn on notifications. That helps us bring you more emotional and unforgettable stories like this one. The sun had already set behind the Colorado hills, casting long, cold shadows across the ravine. The air was sharp, the earth damp from the rain 2 days earlier. Amid tangled roots and scattered leaves, a motionless shape lay hidden beneath a fallen log, barely breathing, barely alive. It was a German Shepherd. His coat, once gleaming black and tan, was now matted with blood and dirt. His right hind leg twisted at an unnatural angle. His ears twitched only when the wind shifted. Around his neck was a faded imprint where a collar used to be. No tags, no chip. No one had come. This wasn't just any dog. This was Ranger, a former K9 with the Sheriff's Department, trained in search and rescue, drug detection, and tactical response. For years, he had served with discipline and loyalty, earning medals and the respect of every officer in the unit. But that was before the accident, before the budget cuts, before the injuries ended his career. And now, here he was, abandoned, broken, left to fade into the trees. He hadn't eaten in 3 days, hadn't moved more than a few inches since slipping down the ravine in a desperate attempt to find water. The wound in his leg had worsened. Infection set in. Every breath rattled. Every hour was a new battle. But he hadn't given up, even when his vision blurred, even when the coyotes circled in the night, even when his body screamed to surrender. Something deep inside him, something trained, something loyal, told him to wait, to hold on, because someone had to come. Didn't they? 20 miles away, in a quiet cabin just outside of Ridge Hollow, Emily Carter tightened the last latch on her Jeep. She hadn't been back in these mountains for nearly 2 years, not since her fiancé, Deputy Marcus Reeves, had died during a night raid. Marcus had been a K9 handler, and Ranger had been his partner. They'd been a team, man and bull, heart and instinct. After Marcus's death, the department retired Ranger and reassigned him temporarily. But the updates stopped. When Emily asked where the dog had gone, the answers were vague. "He's fine," they said. "He was placed with a handler." She hadn't believed it. Last week, a neighbor near the edge of town had told her they'd seen a limping German Shepherd wandering into the forest, dragging one leg. That was all she needed. Now she was back, searching. The first day, she found nothing. Just tracks. The second day, she followed those tracks deeper into the woods. And on the third day, she reached the ravine. Ranger couldn't lift his head anymore. The sounds around him had faded into a haze of distant echoes. He didn't know how many days had passed, only that he was tired, bone-deep tired. Then he heard it, crunching leaves. A voice, faint, female, familiar. "Ranger!" His eyes twitched. Another step. "Ranger! Baby, is that you?" The wind shifted, and for the first time in days, his tail thumped against the wet earth. Once, then again. Emily dropped to her knees at the edge of the ravine, gasping when she saw the collapsed figure below. "Oh my God! Ranger!" She scrambled down, sliding on her hands and knees through the mud, her heart pounding. When she reached him, her breath caught. He was barely recognizable, emaciated, bleeding, and shaking violently. But when she touched his face, his eyes flickered. "Hey," she whispered, voice cracking. "I'm here. You held on. You waited for me." He tried to lick her hand, but he was too weak. Tears fell freely down her cheeks. "You're not dying out here. Not alone. Not like this." She pulled off her jacket and wrapped it around his body, dialing for help with one hand while whispering to him the whole time. "It's okay. I've got you now." And in the faintest motion, barely visible, Ranger let out one soft breath and closed his eyes. The emergency vet clinic was a 40-minute drive from Ridge Hollow, but Emily made it in 27. She never let go of Ranger. He lay curled in the back seat, swaddled in her jacket, head resting on her lap, barely breathing. Her hand didn't stop moving over his fur, slow, constant strokes, like she was willing his heartbeat to stay steady with every pass. "Stay with me," she whispered. "You're not done yet. You hear me, Ranger? You're not done." She kept her eyes on the road, but her mind was racing backward. To the last night she saw Marcus alive, to the way he'd kissed her forehead and said, "Take care of him if anything ever happens to me." She had tried, but after the funeral, after the department took Ranger away, no one gave her answers. No one told her where he went. She should have fought harder, should have looked sooner. And now, every minute counted. When she skidded into the vet's parking lot, a tech was already running out with a gurney. "This is Ranger," Emily said, breath shaking. He was K9. He hasn't eaten in days. His leg's broken. He's burning up." The tech didn't hesitate. "We've got him. We'll do everything we can." She tried to follow them inside, but they gently held her back. "You need to wait in the lobby." The doors closed. Emily sank into a chair, muddy, trembling, and soaked to the skin. Her phone buzzed. It was the department's old number, the one she hadn't dialed since Marcus died. She let it go to voicemail, because right now, nothing else mattered but the bug in that room. Inside the operating room, Ranger drifted between consciousness and shadows. He heard voices, some familiar, some distant. He felt cold metal beneath him. Pressure, pain, light. His instincts told him to fight, but his body had given all it had. His thoughts, though fogged and slipping, reached for the last thing that made sense. Emily, the voice, the warmth, the scent of someone he'd never stopped recognizing. He'd waited for her, and now, maybe that was enough. Maybe it was time. But somewhere beneath the hum of machines, a firm hand pressed against his chest. A voice, clear and strong, said, "Don't give up, big guy. You're not just a dog. You're a hero." An hour passed, then another. Emily sat in silence, clutching the tag she'd found buried in Ranger's fur. Half rusted, barely legible, but still there. Unit 12, K9, Ranger. Handler. "Reeves. Emily?" She looked up. A vet in blue scrubs stood before her, face unreadable. "We stabilized him. The infection in his leg was spreading fast, but we cleaned and treated it. He's severely dehydrated and underweight. We almost lost him. Twice. But, he pulled through." Her lips trembled. "He's going to live?" The vet nodded gently. "We're not out of the woods, but if anyone has a shot, it's that dog." Relief hit her like a wave. Her shoulders shook. Tears welled. She pressed her hands over her face and let the sob escape. "Can I see him?" "In a few minutes. He's resting now. We'll let you in once he's stable. Emily stood and walked slowly to the window, watching the storm clouds finally break apart outside. But just as she caught her breath, her phone buzzed again. Another number, same area code. This time she answered. "Ms. Carter?" a male voice asked. "Yes?" "This is Officer Dean from Ridge Hollow. We received your message about Ranger. I need to inform you. We're opening an investigation." She froze. "Why?" "Because Ranger wasn't rehomed through the department. According to our records, he vanished from the system over a year ago." Emily's heart dropped. "What are you saying?" she whispered. "I'm saying someone may have abandoned a decorated canine on purpose." And suddenly, what she thought was over had only just begun. The next morning, Emily returned to the clinic before sunrise. She hadn't slept. Not really. Her mind replayed the officer's words over and over. He vanished from the system. The thought that someone had quietly discarded Ranger after all he'd given haunted her more than she could say. Inside the recovery room, the lights were dim. A quiet beep pulsed from the monitor beside the bed. Ranger lay motionless, IV taped to his front leg, a shaved patch on his side where they had cleaned the worst of the infection. He looked fragile, smaller somehow. But when Emily stepped closer, his eyes slowly opened. "Hey, buddy," she whispered, crouching beside him. "You didn't give up." His tail moved, just once, barely a flick, but it was enough. She smiled through her tears and brushed a hand across his ear. "I'm not leaving you again. Ever." The vet entered a few minutes later holding a clipboard. "He's still weak, but his vitals are stronger than last night. That dog has a will to live I don't see often." Emily nodded, eyes locked on Ranger. "He always did." The vet hesitated, then lowered her voice. "Do you mind if I ask something personal?" "Sure." "I saw the handler tag." "Reeves, he was your fiancé?" Emily nodded slowly. "Yeah." "I'm sorry. I remember that case." Silence hung in the air. Ranger's eyes slowly closed again, finally able to rest. The vet tapped the folder. "I also wanted you to know. The infection came from a wound caused by metal. Deep, likely a trap or sharp fencing. And there were old scars too. Too many for a dog who should have been resting in retirement." Emily's heart sank. "He was mistreated?" The vet didn't answer directly. "Let's just say he's lucky to have found you when he did." Emily sat there for hours. She told Ranger everything. About the long nights after Marcus died. About how she tried to find him. About how she blamed herself when he disappeared. And when her voice cracked, when her guilt surfaced, Ranger opened his eyes again and nudged his head weakly against her hand. It was enough to break her. "You forgive me, don't you?" she whispered. "Even when I couldn't find you, you never forgot me." His ears twitched and his eyes fluttered closed again, his breathing calm. That afternoon, a knock came at Emily's cabin door. It was Officer Dean, tall late 40s, with a gruff look, softened by a quiet kindness. "I came to talk," he said. "Mind if I come in?" Emily nodded and stepped aside. They sat in the kitchen, Ranger's empty collar on the table between them. "I checked the transfer records," Dean said. Ranger was marked as retired due to behavioral decline, and supposedly sent to a rehabilitation kennel 2 counties over. Emily frowned. "But he wasn't there?" Dean shook his head. "No record of arrival, no contract, nothing. Just a line in a file that says, 'placed with handler.' And no one can tell me who that handler was." Emily felt her stomach twist. "Someone got rid of him." "I think so," Dean said. "And whoever it was, they covered their tracks." She stared down at the collar, fingers tightening. He was a hero. Marcus trusted them to take care of him, and they just left him to die? I'm not letting this slide, Dean said, but it's going to take time. Emily stood, walking to the window. I don't care how long it takes. I'll find out who did this. Dean watched her for a moment, then gave a small nod. I believe you. As he left, he added, Ranger's lucky you found him. Emily turned back to the collar. No, I'm the lucky one. That evening at the clinic, Emily sat beside Ranger's crate as a gentle rain tapped the windows. She hummed a tune Marcus used to sing, Lo and see your refrain, and watched as Ranger's tail moved in rhythm, eyes still closed. But just as peace settled over the room, the front desk nurse called her name. There's someone asking about Ranger, she said. He wouldn't leave a name. Emily's heart skipped. Where is he? The nurse pointed toward the glass door. Emily walked over slowly, and outside, through the rain, stood a man in uniform she didn't recognize, watching silently. When their eyes met, he turned and walked away. Emily barely slept that night. She couldn't stop thinking about the man in uniform who had appeared at the clinic and vanished just as quickly. His face was unfamiliar, but there was something in the way he looked at Ranger, something that didn't feel like curiosity. It felt like regret. The next morning, she returned to the clinic with coffee in one hand and determination in the other. Ranger had made it through another night. His vitals were stable. The vet even said he might be able to sit up by the end of the day. But when she sat beside his crate, something new happened. He growled. Low, quiet. His eyes fixed on the window. Emily turned just in time to see a black SUV idling across the street. Windows tinted, no plates. She stood quickly, stepping into the hallway and pointing through the glass. That car. Have you seen it before? The receptionist looked. No, but it's been parked there for half an hour. When she turned back, the SUV was gone. Later that day, Emily brought in an old blanket that had belonged to Marcus, the one Ranger used to sleep on. As she unfolded it near his crate, he let out a soft sound. Not a growl, not a bark, a whine. His paw twitched. Then slowly, painfully, he pulled himself forward and rested his head on the fabric. Tears welled in Emily's eyes. You remember, don't you? She leaned down and whispered, You were his partner. You never stopped waiting. That night, with Ranger finally managing to sit up for the first time, Emily decided to try something bold. She crouched in front of him and spoke gently but firmly. Ranger, search. His ears flicked. Search, she repeated. He sniffed the air, then looked toward the hallway. His body tensed, almost as if something familiar had been triggered deep inside him. Emily tried another. Guard. This time he growled toward the door. Her heart skipped. Whatever he'd been through, he hadn't forgotten his training. It was still in there, buried under pain and betrayal, but still alive. She grabbed a notebook and began listing every K9 command Marcus used to use. She tried them one by one. Ranger responded to 4, weakly, but clearly. He was remembering, and then one more came to her. Find him. She said it without thinking, and something in Ranger snapped awake. He stood, staggering, shaking, but he stood. Ranger. Emily rose, trying to calm him, but he was already moving toward the door, as if that command had cut through every wound and weakness. Ranger, wait! The vet rushed in, stunned. What's happening? Emily caught him just before he collapsed, but she wasn't afraid, because now she knew something powerful. He hadn't just survived. He still had purpose. That night, she received a package on her porch. No name, no return address. Inside was a worn flash drive. She plugged it into her laptop with shaky fingers. There were 6 video files, surveillance footage, grainy and low-res. Each one showing a fenced-in yard, a cage, a figure walking up and down rows of kennels. And there, in the corner, a familiar form. Ranger. In one video, he barked repeatedly as someone approached. In another, he was dragged out by a handler she didn't recognize. And in the final clip, he was left outside in the rain, gate open. No food, no collar, a slow fade to black. Emily closed the laptop, her hands trembling. Someone had wanted her to see this, but why now? And why anonymously? The next day, Ranger was stronger. He greeted her with a soft bark and tried to stand on his own. "You're getting there," she smiled. "One day at a time." But as she opened her phone to check the time, a new text arrived from an unknown number. No words, just a photo of Marcus. Smiling, arm around Ranger, standing beside a man in a sheriff's uniform Emily had never seen before, and underneath the image, a single line. "Ask him what happened that night." Emily stared at the photo on her phone for a long time. Marcus, beaming in his canine vest, one hand on Ranger's back. But it wasn't just his smile that caught her. It was the man beside him, Sheriff Ray Gorman. She hadn't seen that face in years, not since the funeral. Not since he stood up at the podium and said Marcus's death was a tragic loss during a botched raid, and offered nothing more than a flag and a folded certificate. She remembered the way he avoided her eyes, the way he rushed past her afterward, avoiding questions like he was dodging gunfire. Now here he was again, in the photo, standing beside the 2 souls she loved most, like he belonged there. But someone wanted her to ask him what happened that night. That meant there was more, and she was going to find out. Back at the clinic, Ranger stood longer today, steady for a full 15 seconds. His tail wagged when Emily walked in, a small but powerful reminder that life was still in his bones. She sat beside him, pulling out the photo again. "You remember him, don't you?" she asked, showing him the screen. Ranger's eyes fixed on the image. His ears tilted forward, a low, uncertain whine escaped his throat. "That's Gorman," she whispered. "What did he do to you?" She didn't expect an answer, but she saw something in Ranger's posture, a stillness, a flash of alertness, that made her sure of one thing. Ranger knew. 2 days later, she drove back to Ridge Hollow's sheriff's office for the first time in over a year. The front desk officer recognized her instantly. "Emily, wow, it's been a while. I need to speak with Sheriff Gorman," she said, voice calm but firm. The man frowned. "He's not in today. He's actually retiring this week. Final paperwork." Emily's heart kicked. "Do you know where I can find him?" The officer hesitated, then scribbled an address. "He keeps his boat by the lake. He's usually there by sunset." She took the note and left without another word. The lake was still when she arrived. The dock creaked beneath her boots as she stepped toward the boathouse. The water reflected the pink and gold of a fading sky, peaceful on the surface. But her heart was anything but calm. Sheriff Ray Gorman stood at the edge, fishing line tent, wearing a ball cap and an old denim shirt. He didn't turn around when she approached. "Took you long enough," he said quietly. Emily's chest tightened. "So you knew." "I figured someone would come asking eventually," he said, reeling in the line slowly. "I got a message," she said. "A photo. Of you, Marcus, and Ranger. And a warning." Gorman finally turned to face her. His eyes were sunken, older than she remembered. "What happened that night?" she asked. "The night Marcus died." Gorman stared at her for a long moment. then sighed. "It wasn't supposed to happen the way it did," he said. "We had intel, bad intel. The raid was rushed, no backup. I was in charge." She stepped closer. "And?" "There was a moment," he continued, "when we knew we were compromised. I gave the order to fall back. Marcus didn't hear it. He went in with Ranger. Alone." Emily's fists clenched. "You let him go in blind?" "I tried to stop him," he said. "But when the shooting started, everything unraveled. He died shielding that dog." A lump rose in her throat. Gorman looked away. Ranger dragged him out of that building, bleeding. Wouldn't let the paramedics near him. He stayed at his side the whole time. Emily wiped her eyes. "Why didn't you tell me that?" "Because I blamed myself," he said. "And when the department wanted to quietly retire Ranger, I agreed." Emily's heart stopped. "You signed off on abandoning him?" Gorman's silence was the answer. "I was trying to bury my shame," he whispered. "But he didn't deserve that. None of you did." She took a long breath, eyes burning. "He remembers you, Ray, and what you did." "I know." And for the first time in years, Emily saw the sheriff not as a leader, but as a broken man. "Come see him," she said. "Look him in the eye." "I don't think I deserve to." "That's not for you to decide." The following morning, Emily stood in the clinic's waiting room, watching through the glass as Ranger slowly paced his enclosure for the first time. He wasn't limping as much. His coat, though still patchy, had been brushed and cleaned. He was gaining weight, and his eyes, once dull and distant, now followed her every movement with the alertness of a dog who remembered who he was. The vet leaned beside her. "At this rate, he'll be ready to go home within a week." Emily smiled. "He never stopped fighting." The vet nodded. "Neither did you." But Emily's smile faded, because she knew the hardest part was still coming. Later that afternoon, Sheriff Ray Gorman walked into the clinic. He wore civilian clothes now, jeans and a plain button-up. He looked smaller, less like the man who once commanded an entire department, and more like someone who had been carrying guilt for too long. Emily met him at the door. "You sure about this?" "No," he admitted. "But it's time." She led him to the back room. Ranger lay in his crate, head resting on a folded towel. His ears perked up the moment he sensed movement. And then he saw Gorman. The dog didn't move at first. His eyes locked onto the man's face and stayed there. Gorman stepped forward, slowly, voice barely above a whisper. "Hey there, soldier." Ranger's ears twitched. His breathing shifted. "It's me. I know you remember," the former sheriff said, kneeling down. "You tried to protect him that night. You did more than any of us, and I should have protected you." There was a long pause. Then, without a sound, Ranger pushed himself onto all fours. It was unsteady, painful. But he stood. Emily gasped, covering her mouth. Ranger took one step forward, then another. Gorman's voice cracked. "I don't deserve your forgiveness, but thank you for surviving." The German Shepherd moved close. His nose brushed the sheriff's hand, and in a moment that broke them both open, Ranger pressed his head into the man's chest. Gorman let out a breath he'd been holding for years and held the dog like he had held Marcus's flag. Reverent, moment, and full of things he'd never said. Emily turned away, tears running down her cheeks. This wasn't just healing. This was justice in the form of grace. The next few days passed quietly. Ranger recovered faster than anyone expected. The clinic staff said they'd never seen a dog so determined to walk again. Emily believed it had less to do with the medicine, and more to do with the truth finally being spoken. Word spread. People started showing up. Officers who'd once worked with Marcus. neighbors who remembered Ranger's patrols, children who once posed for photos with him at community events. They brought toys, blankets, thank you cards. One officer left a note on the front counter. Ranger wasn't just a canine, he was family. And yet, beneath the warmth, a shadow remained. Emily knew there was one more thing she needed to do. That night, she sat beside Ranger and held up a folder. "I got the documents today," she said. "Your official discharge was never processed. They erased you." He looked at her, ears alert. "So, I'm putting you back in, as a hero, Marcus's partner, fully honored." She held out a medal, one that had never been awarded after the raid. It had Marcus's name on it, but now it was for both of them. "You carried him out. You didn't let him die alone, and now we're going to make sure you're never forgotten either." Ranger licked her hand, then rested his head on her lap. She whispered, "You're going home soon." But just before the lights dimmed for the night, a call came in from Officer Dean. When she picked up, his voice was tense. "Emily, I think you should know. We found out who sent that flash drive." She sat upright. "Who?" There was a pause. It wasn't someone inside the department. It was someone on the raid that night. A third unit. Off the books. Emily froze. "Why would they?" "We don't know yet, but I think this goes deeper than anyone thought, and you might be in danger." Emily looked down at Ranger. He was asleep. But something told her they were both about to face one last test. Emily didn't sleep that night. The warning from Officer Dean echoed in her mind. A third unit, off the books, connected to the raid that took Marcus's life, and the same people who had left Ranger behind like a piece of disposable equipment. She stayed by Ranger's side, watching him breathe, his chest rising and falling slowly. He was stronger now. He could walk, bark, eat, even sit up without help. But she knew that beneath the healing, danger still lingered. By sunrise, she had made a decision. They weren't going to wait for answers to come to them. They were going to fight for them. 2 days later, Emily and Ranger returned to Marcus's old precinct for the first time in over a year. It wasn't just to revisit the past. It was to reclaim it. She wore a black coat, hair tied back, eyes focused. Ranger walked beside her with a firm step, wearing a new vest with the word "Retired" stitched above his badge number. He turned heads as they entered the station, not just because of who he was, but because he had survived. The officers went silent. "Is that?" someone whispered. "It's him, Ranger." Emily stood at the front desk, raising her voice. "I need to speak to Commander Reed." A few tense moments passed before the commander emerged, older now, but still stiff with authority. He stared at Ranger, then at Emily. "This is unexpected." She stepped forward, placing the flash drive, the photographs, and the department's own discharge paperwork on the desk. "I want his record reinstated. I want his name honored. And I want an investigation into the men who erased him." Reed looked at the evidence, then at her. "Where did you get this?" Emily's voice never wavered. Someone who was tired of staying silent. Ranger sat beside her, calm and watchful, like he understood everything. Reed exhaled. "I'll need time." "You don't have it," she said. "Because if you don't act, this goes public. I have every file backed up and ready to forward to the press, the mayor's office, and every K9 unit in the state." A long silence followed. Then Reed nodded once. "We'll open the case." 1 week later, the department held a ceremony. Not a funeral, not a farewell, a homecoming. Ranger was honored for his years of service, his survival, and his loyalty. Emily stood beside him as officers saluted, veterans wept quietly, and local news cameras captured the moment he was officially reinstated into the Ridge Hollow K9 legacy. They placed a medal around his neck. But it wasn't the medal that made the moment real. It was the way Ranger sat tall, ears forward, as if Marcus was standing beside him again. After the ceremony, Emily led him to the edge of the training field, the same one where he and Marcus had trained every day. She crouched beside him and whispered, "You made it home." His tail thumped twice. She placed a small plaque into the ground, beneath a young oak tree. It read, K9 Ranger. Partner to Deputy Marcus Reeves Loyal. Brave, never forgotten. Tears welled in her eyes. He'd be so proud of you. Ranger licked her cheek, then rested his head on her shoulder. In the weeks that followed, the investigation exposed deep corruption. The 3rd Unit had been running private raids, paid under the table. Marcus had stumbled onto something that night, and Ranger had witnessed it all. They had tried to bury them both, but neither stayed buried. Officer Dean made sure arrests were made. Sheriff Gorman gave a full statement and resigned with honor, finally at peace with his role in the past. And Emily? She was offered a position as liaison for retired service dogs, helping them transition to civilian life with proper care, dignity, and the love they deserved. Ranger came home with her for good. He had his own bed now, his own routine. He watched sunsets from the porch and trotted beside Emily during her morning jogs. He greeted neighbors like a small-town mayor and slept with one paw touching her foot each night. He was no longer just a canine. He was family. And every time someone asked about the scar on his leg or the faded vest he wore proudly, Emily would smile and say, "He's not just a dog. He's a survivor, and the bravest soul I've ever known."